I think there's a dynamic that's about to happen that is different than anything that has ever happened. And I think this is actually an important piece of changing social science axioms for a minute. So how do you get how do you get everyone on this little spaceship biosphere to recognize that they are all inside of the same spaceship biosphere, and now we're affecting things at the level of the whole fucking biosphere, right? It's like climate change and biodiversity loss and like all those issues. And if we have catastrophic threats from the way we develop exponential tech like AI or nanotech, or like, these are not local issues. So local governance doesn't make any sense if we're affecting each other completely. Like China and India and the US can't think about climate change as countries in a meaningful, sense without what each other are doing. So how do we get that to happen? Well, either you've got to have some aliens attack so we can all unify against a common enemy. You've got to abstract the enemy and say climate change is the enemy. We all need to unify to keep ourselves from going extinct as a species, or AI is the enemy, or whatever the fuck we decide. Or you can actually unify. So the first part is you can unify against an abstract threat, right? It does not have to be an agentic threat. So something like environmental destruction or catastrophic risk of any kind could be a unifying imperative. It's harder, but it's possible. But the next thing is we also can unify towards shared goals, where it is more useful for us to do that than not. And this is an important thing. And I think right now we have a situation where if we continue in-group, out-group dynamics, there is no way to not move into catastrophic and even existential risk zone. And so we absolutely do have abstracted enemy hypothesis drivers of our need to be totally cohered. But we also have, the kinds of opportunities that are most interesting to all of us are only realizable that way. Why do I say this? If we think about it from a game theoretic perspective, those early tribes would cohere with each other as a team to then, when they needed to, compete against other tribes in a win-lose game model, and they would compete either for resource extraction of scarce resources or direct head-on competition through war, right, through military conflicts. And if there was enough abundance of resources and materials that it was easier to take shit from nature, from the commons, and fight each other, then they wouldn't fight. If there started to be scarcity and fighting each other directly or indirectly became a necessity or an easier thing to do, then that happened. And then, of course, if there's a larger tribe and we can't actually fight them competently, then we might unify with some other smaller tribes. But then now we're bigger, that's going to have them do it. Now we're at villages, and then they're going to keep unifying and creating better. Now we need signaling systems, right? Now we need culture larger. And so we'll eventually get nation states and economic trading blocks. But as we think about this kind of what we've called civilization growing from tribes into what we have now of, kinds of large conglomerated superpower dynamics where our ability to compete with each other for extracting scarce resource from the earth is actually getting us towards the points of making the earth not habitable across major regions, and where then you start getting massive refugee human migration issues that start to collapse grid infrastructure that can't handle it over the next little bit. Syria was already an example of that. Droughts leading to people moving from subsistence farming areas into the city, leading to resource shortage, leading to the war and the escalation that happened, and it was basically a small one. But also, even then, these groups in war with each other, we can't use our weapons, right? Like China and Russia in the U.S., like, we just can't get into a war with each other. So we'll try and deal with them as proxy wars or whatever, but we have weapons that are powerful enough that winning would against the other one, since the other one also has powerful enough shit, winning would require destroying the whole playing field for everybody. When you get to enough power in a game theoretic situation where winning requires destroying the playing field so it equals losing even for the winner, and win-lose game theory becomes omni-lose-lose because there's that much power, then you either have to get off game theory entirely, and this means in-group, out-group dynamics, or you go extinct or very near, right? You have a massive step down in capacity, catastrophic or existential risk. I think in the next very little bit, very short number of years, we either continue competing for the extraction of scarce resources, moving the biosphere towards more, critical fragility, and keep competing with each other in heads-on fashions that end up and competing for more powerful tech that leads to exponential tech that is autocatalytic and can run away from us in a number of different ways. And we will have then a radical step down in civilization, either no civilization or a radical step down if we continue doing that, or we actually figure out what the fuck omni-win-win on a little bitty biosphere where we're all in it together means. And it means something where nations are an obsolete idea. They might have served evolutionary relevance, but they don't anymore. And it means something where private balance sheets where you want to accumulate more shit on your balance sheet because it leads to new capacities, but scarce stuff that other people don't have, and where nature doesn't have a balance sheet. So all of the economic incentive is to externalize cost to nature, take shit out of nature, and compete with each other for it. That shit served evolutionary relevance, but can't go further either. So there is some, a post win-lose game theory, a post in-group, out-group mentality requires a complete shift to economics, complete shift to governance, complete shift to culture, religion, all the way down to a shift at identity, where I'm not even a fucking separate being in my mind. Of course I'm an individual, and actually even a totally unique, non-fungible individual, but I'm an individual that wouldn't exist without the whole rest of it. That wouldn't exist without an atmosphere with oxygen. That wouldn't exist in the way that I am without other people doing a gazillion functions that my life depends on. And when I get that we're all these emergent properties of an interconnected whole, and unique emergent properties that are not replaceable, at that identity level, we can start getting something that can transcend in-group, out-group dynamics.